senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea. Innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. cdo.org.
Quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il piano Easy Smart a canone zero anziché a 3,90 € al mese. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
A una O che divide, preferiamo una E che unisce, per sostenere il presente e il domani di tutto il Paese. E lo facciamo da 70 anni. Eni, l'energia di sempre e l'energia nuova.
Grazie mille. Guardo sempre te?
serve quando ti serve. Nasce Easy Bank, la nuova banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. cdo.org.
Quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il piano Easy Smart a canone zero, anziché a 3,90 € al mese. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
A una O che divide, preferiamo una E che unisce, per sostenere il presente e il domani di tutto il paese. E lo facciamo da 70 anni. Eni, l'energia di sempre e l'energia nuova.
che ti serve quando ti serve. Nasce Easy Bank, la nuova banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buonasera.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to everyone who's here and to those who are following us online. To all our panelists who I'll present shortly. Accepting the challenge of change to grow. And this is along with Compagnia delle Opere, is the challenge we've been facing these recent years, the challenge of change, which involves all of our businesses right now and is affecting all of us. And you've probably heard it saying over and over that change and crisis can be an opportunity, or it can be a curse for those who conduct their own businesses every day or in offices. The theme that Compagnia delle Opere wants to talk about today is about supporting entrepreneurs to accept the opportunity of change. These opportunities happen according to the work we've done through three main themes that we've identified as topics of change and topics of challenge: work, AI, and the state of inflation and the increase of materials costs that has generated in the past few years a situation that we haven't seen for a very long time. And this is also imposing a change and affects the way we do business and the way we conceive our own businesses. So to talk about these themes, you've seen we've got many great panelists with us now, so that's the other challenge we have, is to be able to face this topic all together tonight in an hour that's already late, and also that I can tell now hasn't made people lose interest here at the meeting. We'll be talking with Roberta Cocco, member of the board of directors of Il Sole 24 Ore, with Antonio Gozzi, president of Duferco and president of Federacciai, Marco Hannappel, president and CEO of Philip Morris Italy and president of Southwestern Europe at Philip Morris International, Bernardo Mattarella, CEO of Invitalia, Francesco Seghezzi, president of the Adapt Foundation, and with Adolfo Urso, the Minister of Enterprises and Made in Italy, who I'd like to thank as the Minister and the rest of the panelists for being here with us today.
Allora.
So I'll change the order of who's speaking, because we've seen these three big themes: work, AI, and inflation, and the increase of prime materials costs as the three themes we have to address in this debate before later moving on with the other speakers to the debate itself. So it's a topic that worries us particularly, but it also gives us a chance to deepen into the topic itself. As you can see, the theme of work is transversal across the meeting. There's an exhibition from examples of people who've had to face these challenges. And now we've asked Francesco Seghezzi, who I thank once again for being here and for joining us, to briefly help us, because we've got time is short, to try and learn and to suggest ideas on what's happening right now in the world of work, of mass resignations, the difficult relationships between generations, and how this is an opportunity and a challenge for Italian businesses, and especially for small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'd like to start with a few bits of data. You can read about this topic from many different ways. I've chosen this specific one because I feel it reflects the changes that are already happening and the unequivocal way, and from a certain point of view, unstable way in which things will change in the next 10 years. In the last 5 years, 2017, the population in work, so between 15 and 64, has gone down by 750,000. We're talking about 750,000 potential workers less. The median age of the work population has gone from 38 to 44. That's the average age of workers. In the same time span, workers who are under 35, the young workers we've been speaking about so often, have gone down by 3.6 million. Talking about millions of people here. This is huge. And the number of workers who are over 45 has gone up by 4.2 million. So in the past 5 years, and if we take we look at the decade, it's even worse. We've completely changed the structure, the occupational structure of our country. And we can simply classify it as an aging process. We've got less young people, not only less young people who can work, but less young people in general. And this is the element which, according to me, cannot govern and judge the choices that we make. That those who own their own businesses and all actors in the markets have to bear in mind. We've been speaking about this for years, that at first there wasn't enough work, and now when you look at the newspapers, there's not enough workers. While there are jobs, but no one wants to work them. We've got the highest level of employed people in Italy since we've started counting. We've got more employed women. We've got the highest level of people with fixed contracts since records started. So the topic at hand is, to use a theme that can seem a bit cold, is of the lack of resources. And it's a question of quality, because at the beginning we have to look at scarcity. It's a problem of quantity fundamentally. And the final piece of data I'll give you is that this is what's happened in the past 5 years, according to the National Office of Statistics. Is that by 2036, Italy will have lost 3.5 million further workers, people of working age. So the perspective going forward is that of an emptying of the working population, which cannot make us just say, oh, we can't find workers because people don't want to work. Something which I'm sure happens, and I'm sure there are people who could work but don't. It's obvious. But this thesis in the long run won't hold up, because simply we will be missing workers. It's inevitable. This fact is inevitable, even if you take into account positive immigration. So it's already taking immigration into account. So according to me, this is the scenario we've got now. We've been spending years worrying over the fact that technology, that Roberta will talk about later, that technology would steal jobs from us. But now we do have jobs. That's what we're facing. We're missing people, not jobs, which is a completely different scenario. So what's this saying? So young people are a very rare resource right now, and that people who lose who lose a young person in the workplace lose one of the few possibilities they have to innovate and to bring fresh ideas and new innovations from many points of view. But also, it's very easy to lose these young people because there's not many of them. I don't have to explain to you the question of supply and demand. So where there are many businesses looking for workers and there are few young people out there, naturally they'll go towards whichever company is offering the best wages. So we shouldn't be surprised at the rising number of people quitting their jobs and moving. So it's a problem of how do you attract people and how do you retain them? And here, especially with young people, but not only, because many times we have a wide view of this, that young people come in and innovate. You know, so those of us who've got more experience will know that young people are even more precious than we can ever imagine. Technicians who get who go to another company often come at a risk to smaller companies who train these people for young people for many years. So the main message which I'd want to give you is there's no longer an excuse from this point of view. The question of how to retain and how to attract people is the topic that will carry us forward in future. Sure, we can move forward with plan B, that is to bring more automation into certain processes. Naturally, we'll inevitably move in this direction. In fact, we've been too afraid of this process, or rather it's necessary, but it's not the only solution. The approach needs to change, starting from one point, which is listening. Especially when we're talking about young people, there's a theme of understanding their needs and their requirements. The fact that often you can't even understand each other between generations because we don't know what we're talking about. We can say, yes, I agree with you, but we haven't actually understood what the other person's saying. So it's a question of listening to each other and bearing in mind that there's a series of requirements, of necessities that are different. There's a difference in work-life balance among generations, of what people want out of their work, of job growth, of career growth, of training that's needed, that's maybe before wasn't considered or talked about. But the challenge of businesses now, and I'll just summarize here, is to differentiate between when this listening will pull out some real needs and when it will simply find some false pretenses and that are unnecessary. There are people who, obviously there are people who are saying that I've got enough skills, I've studied in a great uni, I want to be CEO next year. Obviously that's nonsense, but it shouldn't be a question of throwing our workers under the bus. It's given this extreme scarcity of workers and that it's a structural problem, we can make as many plans about birth rate as we want, but if a person's born now, they will not start working tomorrow. This will work in 20 years. This is a very important thing to bear in mind. But right now, to keep these people, to keep workers, we need to be able to stop and to listen to them, to understand now when the question of responsibility of a country, when it's faced with the challenge of change, or when it's faced with some pretenses, which in a kind of certain cultural context, it's very different to one of the past. And so I'll just close by saying that sticking together among businesses is extremely important, because simply taking random shots on this front is easy, but it doesn't solve anything. Thank you.
Thank you. You've already given us some words like responsibility and togetherness that we need to look, which will be the fil rouge of this, not just of this meeting, but also of the work of the CDO every day. And I'll pass the word over to Roberta Cocco straight away to talk about artificial intelligence. Is it a curse to look at for the small and medium enterprise, or is it an opportunity in their relationship with the question of work, which I think could be interesting? Thank you to you. Thank you for the invitation. So, artificial intelligence isn't the demon. It's not the devil. It's simply a set of algorithms which a human being has written. So behind it, there's always a human being, and which must have the objective to improve something, to improve a process, to improve a status, to help to read the millions of data points which people couldn't do in years, and the system can do it in moments or seconds. So beyond artificial intelligence, which is certainly the most disruptive, most revolutionary of the technologies, but wasn't born yesterday, but has been studied for decades. What's important, I must say, our colleague here has said many key points, but businesses of whatever size, above all the small and medium ones, must be prepared for this. They must prepare themselves for what's happening, not what might happen, but what's already happening. How to prepare themselves through the capacity to decode what are the innovations that are happening, that are arriving, re-engineering processes, even through artificial intelligence. It means to offer a benefit to the company, to improve their production, to analyze the different components, how that they work together in the best way. How can you do this? You can do it having the right competencies. My colleague here underlined that the lack of people, lack of personnel, but I prefer to saying persons than personnel. I'll double underline the dramatic lack of technological competences in our country. One indicator here, an international indicator, DESI, which defines the digital state of different countries according to a bunch of parameters. Italy, on this one, has recovered at many places in the rankings here, and it's continuing to move up, but there's still one parameter where we are the last but one, which is dramatic, and that's that of the competencies, which they define as human capital. This is a problem that cuts across and touches many businesses, which, if they don't have these competencies, they'll continue to see the advancing of technology with fear, with reservations, because probably they don't have the tools to fully understand its value. On the other side, if we don't have the formed people, how can we attract the right people into the business? And here's the perspective of the young people. This is the first period in history, I think, in which the Generation Z is entering the workplace, a generation which is that which we adults, or boomers as our kids call us, which is what we call the digital natives. The youngsters who enter the working world today are those who've never seen a phone with a wire on it, whereas we obviously remember as a kid. At my grandparents' house, there's a duplex phone, so if the neighbor phoned, then we couldn't use our own phone. These are things that seem prehistoric to those who are entering the workplace now. But on the side of the business, these young people must be considered an incredible resource. First of all, because they have an enormous capacity in exploiting technology. Sure, they do it to play around, to have fun, but they also do it because they have a capacity, a facility, and above all, have trust in technology. Something that we adults have less of. The business must therefore not just attract young people, but it must consider young people as an incredible force, a strength that's complementary to the people who are already there in the workplace and that have the know-how, the culture, which in some way, above all, the businessmen, entrepreneurs identify with the business. Once the young people enter the workplace, they become formatted according to, like this computer word, and they get formatted according to how that particular workplace works, how their culture, etc. Now the workplace must welcome them with great availability because it's necessary to do a new intergenerational pact where the adults who are in the business can offer their experience and the culture and also the vision that made that specific business grow. But the young people have the enormous capacity to have a relationship that's immediate with technology, which must be put at the service of the business. The people inside the business need to be able to help the young people to work such that whichever technology we're talking about, AI is one of these, and great, the capacity with computational power is incredible, but that it must be put at the service of the business. The error that's largest here is that of wanting just to digitalize inefficient processes. And then you'll get optimal digital process. The things must be complementary. The work must be faced with a bit more trust, that which technology can offer us, and to give value to the young people who, for their good luck, have an amazing capacity to welcome what's new. Thank you. Thank you. Even a couple more words that I think will help us in this reflection. What do you think is happening? And how do you think we can work this in the small and large middle enterprises in a context that's in an international context that's so much changed? I say it often. We were deaf, but there were wars, but when they were far away, we didn't notice them, and that was we're a bit deaf to that in a sense. How do we work in this new context, and what challenges and what opportunities can it offer us, this dramatic circumstance? Thank you for the invitation. In effect, this great change is true. I spoke with my children the other day. They're 30-year-olds, and we noted that 3 events, like a pandemic, which the world had never seen the like of before, a war in Europe, which we hadn't seen even in our generation, let alone theirs, and an inflation, which I knew, because back when I was in university, back when I was a university student, we had double-digit inflation, but the 30-year-olds, for them, this inflation, they've never seen it. And instead, they come from an era of deflation, an era and a time when prices were static. So the theme of inflation, which can bring us to thinking about primary materials, raw materials, should be seen without excessive fear or anxiety. The inflation started in the world because of lack of supply after COVID, and the time hysteresis, which had messed up the chains of production, the sort of timing differences there, and of the energy crisis due to the Russian invasion and the war and sanctions which came from that. Both of these factors of inflation, they're slowing, they're easing off now, and so we see inflation seems to be easing off around the world. So that I have a message of trust that the supply chains seem to be back in order, and what would be the greatest economy in the world, the largest in terms of demand for raw materials, which is China, which is living a moment of slowdown. It's not easy for them, but the demand is cooling off, the demand for raw materials. The theme of energy, we've seen Italy involved in a substitution from its dependence on Russian energy, and the stock levels of gas are high again. We're getting close to a window that shouldn't be, a winter that shouldn't be dramatic. Italy's worked well in this point of view, with a capacity of reaction that was quick and efficacious. From my point of view, let me spend a couple of words metallurgy and steel making, and I think this is an emblematic situation of a historical point which touches the country, its qualities, its abilities. And so we have a steel industry that is mostly 80% decarbonized. And so when you think of in 24 million tons of steel, most are produced from electrified, that is decarbonized industries, factories. So there's no country in Europe that has such a good ratio of decarbonized steel production. Where does this come from, this story? It comes from an intuition of our fathers in an Italy post-war, but because that wasn't completely destroyed, not having enough money to reconstruct the great steelworks of the old days, they had to think of a way of producing steel that was needed for reconstruction. What did they do? What did they turned a scarcity into an opportunity. The scarcity was that of money, the money that was available to invest in heavy assets, and so they invented the electric steel making, which required less heavy investment than the other one. So it wasn't the Americans who invented the mini mills of steel. We invented them in Italy. They needed electrical energy, and so in the pre-alpine region there was water, and so the hydroelectric reactors, power stations, were built. These had already been invented, and this was a steel making that used renewable energy, and not only that, but thinking how there was a load of destruction, of things fallen down, broken things to recover. These, our great elderly people, had invented the greatest machine before the word was coined for the circular economy. They invented the greatest machine for circular economy that existed in Europe, because no other European country recycles more than we do, typically 22, 23 million tons. This machine lets us reuse infinitely, practically, the steel resources. So why am I telling you this, particularly to the young people, this parable? Because within it, tells a lot of the capacity of the Italians to make the virtue of necessity and be creativity and inventive. This is the message that I want to give to young people, because we can't, even if difficulties, even though there's the unknown of these challenges, but man has lived many times through changes. But we can't fail to anchor ourselves. We must anchor ourselves. Think of the great Italian capacities. Think of our manufacturing, which had brought the country up even in difficult moments. And so to face these problems according to a rational way, because the only way to defeat fear is that of being rational, of reasonable, of facing problems, analyzing them, thinking of practicable solutions. And I'll finish soon, otherwise I'll be going on too much, but these themes are close to my heart. I debate against a vision of the energy transition, of decarbonization, which has become a new religion, extremist, because it doesn't take account of the fact that even the decarbonization needs to serve people. It's not a religion, it's not a metaphysical thing. So if Europe continues to make errors in its approach, with an extremist approach to face this problem, and doesn't take care of its own industrial system, which risks being stuck in a corner by politics and practices that are extreme in decarbonization. There'll be some, and I say this as somebody who's a president of an industry which is decarbonized, which is investing in renewable energy every time we can, because it wants to be the most on the horizon of 2023 to produce totally green steel, and which realizes, becomes aware of the fact that with a industrial heritage and social, business and work like that of the European industry and manufacturing, Germany, French, etc., must be saved, because in the moment in which there's no businesses, there's no technologies, there's no capacity, a rational capacity to face the challenges of the future, because the businesses are things that make things happen. Future is built on the legs of the businesses, on the legs of the rational ways that the business has to work.
Bene, grazie.
So thank you very much for your words, Mr. Gozzi. So we'll try and recap these as we go around again. Mr. Mattarella, the collaboration between public and private entities in this challenge, the experience of new startups that you've helped to birth. So what's happening on that front, and how do you see the role of Italy as a participant of this change in era, according to the famous phrase by Pope Francis? Thank you for being here with us. Good evening, and thank you again. As Presidente Gozzi was just mentioned, we've passed through some particularly disruptive years. We've lived through a pandemic, through a war provoked by an invasion, and we've lived together along with businesses in the business sector through all these changes. We've seen that the business sector is a system that's adaptive, that is finding countermeasures to the changes. Obviously, with the help of public intervention, to get to your question, to make it through the pandemic, and to resist to, let's call it, what this war is provoking. So even before this, let's say the changes, the dramatic shifts of international supply chains, which we've started seeing even in the first few months of 2022, businesses have started moving to resist the changes and to innovate through investment that we've been helping to sustain. So we've been seeing how this business sector has become more lively and more active than what we could have hoped for. In 2022, the Invitalia system has helped over 100,000 businesses, has contributed to help more than 5,000 grow, has helped and safeguarded more than 35,000 jobs, and has attracted $18 billion worth of investment, has even collaborated along with another work, that of helping public administration in public investments, has also activated 15 and used roughly 15 billion worth of in public investments through the management as a middleman. This has allowed us, I repeat, to see a lively business system that needs to be helped through the most active challenge that we've been talking about just now, which is that of the new problems with work today. That's the growth of increase in taxes that us as public bodies can help to mitigate with our financial intervention here. So what's needed and what are we proposing? What do business want in Italy? They need a system that breaks with the emergence of the emerging model which has surely helped recently, but has also created some interventions that weren't quite as effective, that could have been rolled together, a few duplications here, towards a system of incentives to businesses that incentivize planning your own investments through certainty of the times, and let's say a friendly relationship, as on the theme of the meeting, that we want to maintain with businesses by putting ourselves on their side and sitting on the same side of the table as them. And this is why, what we keep talking about in the our new plan for Italy is to not only manage incentives, but also be actors of complex programs. And on this, recently we signed an agreement, a protocol with the Ministry of Business to support them in the creation of new industrial policy. So through the updating of new infrastructure that enables a sustainable growth, through cohesion, through inclusion, that allows investments to not be simply just wasted. And for this proposal, we've seen, to get to the last part of what we just heard, we've seen, especially on the side of young people, the people who want to start new businesses, a great desire of entrepreneurship, both traditional and modern, which we support through a wide array of measures, but especially with training in entrepreneurship and in business. The fundamental thing, and in this sense, the creation, how we design new laws going forwards, as you've been talking about on the subject of reforming incentives, can also be quite useful. It can go in this direction. As I was saying before, the important thing for businesses is to be trained and given a stable and programmable operative picture. Thank you. So, to conclude this first round, we'll ask Marco the experience of the changes in a large business, a large multinational business with an international outlook, and whether this experience can be a help to whoever's collecting and facing this change. Thank you once again for being here. Thank you again for the invitation. Hello, everyone. So as for international kind of transformations, I'm seeing quite a local one, especially. As you know, Philip Morris has for many years now been a business that has, more or less in the last 60 years in Italy, this year we're celebrating our 60th anniversary of presence in Italy, has created a product that is unchangeable and unchanged from the time of Humphrey Bogart and of John Wayne, which we've been talking about young people now, and many who don't even know who these people are, I've just mentioned. Up to now, it's exactly the same product. It's an unchangeable product, a product that doesn't change, doesn't generate investments, doesn't generate digitalization or new jobs. But to be able to change a product of this type, you need, and we've needed, a lot of effort. With an important focus on our country, $11 billion spent in R&D, new research centers opened in Switzerland and in Singapore to find the product for a formula to substitute the traditional systems that have been used, including the new types of electric cigarettes that are being produced in Bologna. And to do that, we've been building a factory, not only a factory in our country, but a full supply chain. Now we're talking about a factory which is the pillar of this integrated system, which is the largest investment in our country in a manufacturing plant of this century. There's never. We've spent 1.2 billion in this plant, which is the greatest ever seen this century, and it's an extremely important profile what we've been doing, the lesson of a product that doesn't exist, with machinery that doesn't exist, to be exported across the world. From just a small field to the largest factory in our country in record times. So now at this manufacturing plant, it exports more than all the olive oil in Italy, exports more than all the cheeses in Italy, more than all the motorbikes in Italy, which, you know, these aren't small numbers. It's a plant that 6 years ago was literally just a field by the side of the road. Next to this, agriculture in our country. 2,500 people have a contract with Philip Morris that invests 500,000 euros every 5 years in an activity that we run with Codiretti, our partner. We buy all the product that they produce over a product of 5 years for above the market price. And we optimize the resources, both water and energy, and prime resources that they use in this sector. And not only this small piece of innovation we brought to our country has led to a chain of further investments that we've been bringing to Italy. Digitalization in the south, the creation of thousands of jobs since 2020, new centers across Italy, over 750 new jobs created in each center we're setting up. Hundreds and hundreds of jobs created in investments across many different businesses in 2023. And we've created a new plant, an industrial plant that creates not only physical products, but also it itself creates new factories. Last year, we created the biggest R&D that Philip Morris owns in the world, and it's a factory that builds factories. So in Italy, we cooperate with 7,500 Italian businesses. Normally, they're businesses that make machinery, that make industrial structures, the 4.0 industry and further. And thanks to this partnership, we've been creating the factories of the future. We create them here, and then we export them in South Korea, to Romania, to Portugal, to all the countries in the world, even to the US. Even there, we'll arrive with our new machinery made in Italy. An investment of 600 million euros with 8,000 jobs created, and which not only is the kind of brain of a business like ours, because the factories are the muscles, but R&D is the brain, but it's destined to grow because Italian engineering has many possibilities to develop itself to be integrated with small and medium-sized businesses, and it needs medium businesses and large businesses that bring them all together and unites this kind of thread that in a very short amount of time has led, in our case, as I've been mentioning, over the course of 6.5 years, we've increased the GDP by 0.5% in 6 years of our country, and we've made 38,000 jobs from what was 6 years ago a field. This isn't just creating machines, it's a transformation of people. We've been talking about previously how difficult it is to be in a business that develops without any competition. But in a large multinational like ours, we've had internal training centers focalizing on two moments in our business. Fundamentally, when you enter into a business, and then even if you've left the best technological university in the world, you're not as able to do the practical work we need in our factory, or even the old way you just adapt to whatever's needed and update your skills if you're an older worker with more experience. This is a kind of older way to see a training center, and to do it differently, we've been making a training center, which we've been talking about the last year. It's an institute for improving people's skills, which not only gives, for example, my colleague who enters the business a continuous training for the whole period in which he's in the workplace. something which I think is important not only for great multinationals. I think it's the right of a worker, the ability to be constantly trained and to be able to access educational opportunities that enable him to grow further, but also to keep his place at work due to the value of a more skilled worker. We've been working with regional governments in Puglia and Emilia-Romagna to train our teaching staff training the staff of technical schools, which have been kind of forgotten recently, and in major universities like in Bologna and the Torino and Bari polytechnics. Famous and large-scale institutions which we've been working alongside with the Made in Italy ministry to generate what is a kind of teaching opportunity that's valuable not only for us but for all businesses that make part up the 38,000 people that work with Philip Morris Italy.
Minister, thank you again for being present here. The word goes over to you. I'd say that the challenges, we've told about many of them, so your ministry is a key one. I think that even the ministry, the politics in front of a time of change is called to face things in an innovative way, to face the new problems that there are now. So how does the ministry that's directed by you, how is it preparing to face these challenges, to sustain our businesses in these challenges? First of all, I thank you all for the invitation, and I came here also because I think it's really important to listen, to look, to see, to perceive, and to compare ourselves for the things we must do together. So last year, many of those who came to this meeting, and also that one which I took part in Chernobyl later on, which was already in electoral campaign time, they prefigured on the basis of some various surveys the collapse of the country of Italy. And I remember those forecasts that they were saying that with the government of Giorgia Meloni, the spread of the bonds would have gone hugely wide, so that the Italian public debt would be unsustainable. And so the opposite has happened. The spread has gone down. And the Italian government bonds have a super valued, wanted. And so the government of Giorgia Meloni, people said that foreigners would flee from our country, you might remember. Instead, I can say that, like the statistics say, the foreign investments have grown for the first time more in Italy than in the other European, more in Italy than in other European countries like France and Germany. People were saying the drama of the collapse of the Italian stock market, because everybody would have fled from Italian stocks under the government of Giorgia Meloni. Instead, we've seen the opposite. The Italian stock market is at a record high and has gone up in these months by more than other European bourses did, other than European stock markets did. People were saying that we'd be punished by the rating agencies. Instead, one of the principal international agencies has promoted Italy and kicking down other European countries. But people were saying that there'd be a recession, and instead, Italy, up to today, has grown by more than other European countries. Unfortunately, Germany's had a recession, which is very worrying, because it's a principal partner of us. Holland, Hungary, and I fear other European countries, but not Italy. People said that Giorgia Meloni would have brought Italy into international isolation. Do you remember? No, nobody. Instead, Italy has come back to the center of the European politics, and Giorgia Meloni is counted among the great of the world. What happened was exactly the opposite of what they were saying, the doomsayers, because Italy is much better than others think of it. And what appeared to be an anomaly as an economic system in Italy built up on small and micro enterprises, on districts within the valleys, which sustained agriculture production when it was seen better to do it elsewhere, which sustained the food production when it'd be easier, better to import it, which sustained us in making industrial products when there's the great industry in China that makes things at lower cost. This anomalous system, according to the global economy, is today considered to be the model to imitate in the present-day economy, really because it didn't renounce to production. In agriculture, we're the second in Europe after France, and we can never be the first because France is much bigger in terms of agricultural land, but we can strengthen ourselves, and we have done, even in the food industry. In industry, we're the second in Europe after Germany. Well, again, we can never hope to be the first, because Germany has a demographics and an economic power that's great. It has long been superior to that of Italy, but we're reinforcing ourselves here, even compared to Germany. On tourism, we're third or fourth place, while whereas they said we should be the first place in Europe for nature, history, culture of our country, which is we've got room to grow here. We must work on this to grow and employ people. And they also thought they might be that with the ending of the minimum wage there'd be riots in Naples, but no, even a few weeks ago. And it didn't happen, because in the meantime, many of those young people who could work found work in our country, because even employment reaching historical levels, the employment of young people, of women, have reached historical levels. We're on the right road. The country is in the right moment, considering what expects it. We must do what's missing, and we know what's missing. What's missing? Okay, young people and their skills. I can say we need the skills because we lack the skills because we lack the young people. Because since the world has been, especially in times of acceleration, the skills in businesses and in industries need to come from the young people. We need to see what our own kids are doing with the telephones and the internet, and that we can't do. So what's lacking is skills, or is it what's lacking certain skills because what's lacking is young people? And in fact, this government, in every act, is always giving something more, as if it had a lamp that lights up the street for the families, and above all, for the numerous families, to incentivize the birth rate and work. This has gone along with every measure. Check it out. From the revision, many the lowest income families have been helped. So with the cut of some taxes, these are privileged, obviously it can't be otherwise, those who have lowest salaries and those who have full families. In every act, there's always a directive that's incentivized to grow birth rates so that they may be other more young people who enter into the job market with more professional skills. And for this, we have done a series of measures, even in my department. And I think about, for example, the 360-degree thing on Made in Italy, so where many financial resources, creating a sovereign support strategic fund. There are other measures there to train our young people, starting from the institution Made in Italy, which I hope we'll talk about next year, which could be instituted in the principal industrial districts of Italy to form competences, to train people for our young working people. So, and then increasing salaries, because the salaries in Italy are too low. And the best forum to bring up salaries in a structural way is the cutting of the tax burden. We've done this last year. We will continuing to do it, increasing, like we did with the 1st of May decree, and we continue to do this with other laws to make what is structural, if possible incremental, within the Italian fiscal system, to do what? To increase salaries and to bring our young people, to encourage them to seek work, because the problem we have in front is those almost 3 million young people who do not study, don't work, and don't seek work. And these 3 million young people, we need to train them, to bring them to study, to seek work, and to find it, because work indeed is present in Italy. It's available. We are convinced that you can and we must do this even through in industrial politics, an industrial policy which helps our country and which have put in play many other Western countries have done it. People say no, that I seem to have become almost seen as a socialist of the state, but people say you don't understand the changes in the history of the economy, of economics. The United States, who are the fatherland of liberalism, in the United States, in Trump's presidency and in Biden's, have brought the state into play, and in the US, with a clear financial, industrial and energy policy to relaunch the industrial production within the United States. Because the US realized that the invisible hand of the market on its own can't guarantee conditions for growth in the face of phenomena like we were seeing just also in Asia, not only, in which a poor capacity to put the state together. And so other countries are manifesting their crisis. We've realized that during the pandemic, when the car factories were blocked because they lacked a chip, when the pharmaceutical factories couldn't make a vaccine or a medicine because they were lacking certain materials, we saw how vulnerable is the production chain. And I realized another thing, about the disinformation there is in this country. So I'm talking about the parliamentary committee, and I'm exposed myself to explain a lot of what's going on. Of what seemed to be said in social media. Socials, what happened? We saw that the Western democracies were too weak to face the pandemic. We need a single system like Russia and China, because they're authoritarian, can face things better. That's what they said. And it seemed also that our system was too attentive to freedoms, to guarantees, and that they would have the Russians had the first vaccine, the Sputnik, and the Chinese ones would have the first one. And they'd say that the future was theirs. And that in the authoritarian democracies, because we were too weak to face the pandemic and do the vaccine. But what happened in reality? What happened was that, unfortunately, sadly in China, the pandemic has still done many thousands of deaths in recent months. Because sure, they got to vaccines before us, but unfortunately, they were not efficacious. They did not work like ours did. They didn't work like ours did, because when you have the party telling you what to do, and you need to do it quickly, like happened in the Soviet Union, when the party said the commissar, do that or you'll be sacked. What do you need to do? What do you need to obtain? And then in the end, the machine breaks down, the vaccines don't work, and the pandemic proceeds. Today, what are we worried about? About the efficiency of Great China? I say this with a spirit of friendship towards them. No, we're not worried about that. We're preoccupied of the bankruptcy of Evergrande and of the real estate system in China. The Western democracies are not weak. They are stronger because they base themselves on the principle of freedom. And they truly move science and technology. What's moved is moved by industries. So China, the party has taken control of the economic system. And so the business industry comes to a halt. In this scenario, what do we need to bet on? On making ourselves ever more autonomous in the strategic sense with the European Union. This is true for critical raw materials. I'll speak very frankly, because it's my duty. This regards the autonomy for critical raw materials, because it's better to have a cobalt mine in Italy, and we're one of the largest producers, or possessors rather, of cobalt underground in Europe. So thinking of respecting work, the environment, it's better to extract cobalt in Europe to reach our strategic needs than to import cobalt that's been made in Congo, where most of the stuff comes from. That goes from Congo to China and then to Italy. So, and I don't think they respect rules about social care, about work, what happens. We know the conditions in Congo. And the impact on the environment is the same. If we want to avoid passing from a subordination in coal terms and hydrocarbons to Russia and to one versus towards China, we need the lithium, the cobalt, the titanium. Italy is full of primary materials, critical materials, and we need to work in Europe, in Italy, to be able to realize the green and digital technology which we need. In this global economy, Italy could be a leader of Europe, a leader at global level. We've already got the largest multinational business and what's digital, Italian-French one. We already have with Enel Green the greatest photovoltaic solar plant in Europe, in Catania. We have businesses set on the road for digital technology. Many don't know about these, but the things that are to do with rhodium in critical materials in Italy is above that of Germany and France, which means that our industries are already started off on the way to use the critical materials that we need for the digital green transformation in their overall complex. We need to reinforce this. So what have we done? And I'll conclude this phase. When there was the possibility to see the PNR, and I hope that the European Commission can give its last go-ahead to this. So we've had a vote in Parliament to move certain resources from some European things to other things. So we found some more resources we obtained, I hope, to see where we're working, because we have a clear strategic vision of what must be happen to industry in our country. 40 billion euros from this plan. So it's going to businesses, which in 2024, 2025 will put the digital green technology, many billions of euros more than what we already do. €1.5 billion for the businesses that are making renewable energy plants for the consumption in industry. Solar panels on the roofs of the factories themselves for self-energy generation. €2 billion for industries that will invest on producing batteries, electric batteries, solar panels, photovoltaic plants, the things that we need later to realize the green technology. 3 million euros that the law already lets us to reduce the interest rates on this for technology process, for green technology process. Other funds shifted from one side to another to support the digital transformation, the digital and ecological transformation that we need to find ourselves in the center of the Western productive processes. I'll give you an example to help understand this. Europe, in the last 30 years, what has grown inevitably to the east, integrating itself with the Orient. You can see this in Germany. It's the clear thing. The greatest European economic power that I admire, and with which I'm developing great relationships, and a great French collaborator. So we have a new thing we've set up in Berlin, which will also meet in Rome, and then in Forma, and then in France. This stabilizes the industrial setup in our countries, and then in the Europe. We'll have a forum about digital technology, and then in France on green technology. 3 great European countries together to stabilize, to set up. Before we were being isolated, now we're all together. How the Europe must go on the European industrial way. And so the Europe that had grown to the east. Germany had grown, bringing in raw materials at low cost from Russia, and exporting products in China. There's no more Russia, there's no longer China. The Europe can grow only to the south because what's been realized, a sort of iron curtain there were many millions of deaths of various types. This is a war that unfortunately doesn't finish. There's risks going on. The American embassy has said to their citizens to abandon Belarus. We can't grow east because somebody's already built a barrier. We can only go towards the south, and this is what the government in the Mattarella plan and Europe is trying to make a natural bridge with Africa for a win-win situation. In confront of the poor Italian countries, Italy is integrating them into European growth. And I said, when I was talking at Parliament, saying that that we need to free ourselves from the Russian control over energy, and thinking what happened in Kosovo, what could happen in Serbia, in Bosnia, that in Africa, China and Russia are seeking. China is seeking to overcome these African countries, and Russia with Wagner. Thinking of the politic of coups, which we see in another African country, this delineates this politics of coups, in which first you have a coup, and then Wagner arrives, and that's this link, this belt of primary materials that we need, because there's also trafficking of immigrants. There's a strategy. There is a strategy, and it's Europe that is the father of civilization, needs to make itself autonomous and sovereign in retaining and maintaining strong the principles of liberty, which are its strength, and has been in these years, because in the pandemic, we defeated it, we did, but it wasn't defeated there where it was generated.
Grazie, Ministro.
Thank you, Minister. Unfortunately, time is short, but I'd say we've had a very rich discussion here, and I've personally appreciated the fact the Minister's heard the voices of civil society and has underlined for us with great passion, let's say, the path this government wants to start. And I think given the times, it's late, that everything we've raised now has reminded us about what Pope Francis has said. We can't save ourselves, and this is true for all the challenges we face. We can't face them on our own, and in order to face the future, we need each other. And this is what Compagnia delle Opere and their partners are trying to do, to try and dialogue with intermediaries, with partners, with society, and then we can have discussions as we've had today with a great level of intelligence and of skill to talk directly to the government and to policy. And so this is the path we've got ahead of us in this new public-private relationship. And I think that the meeting is helping us bear witness to this fact and how we can see that this is the work we've got going ahead for us. Thank you, everyone that stayed with us until this late hour, and for all our guests and our panelists. Thank you.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale, non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire, non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali, con il desiderio di affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere. Un criterio ideale. Un'amicizia operativa. cdo.org.
Quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il piano Easy Smart a canone zero, anziché a 3,90 € al mese. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
A una O che divide, preferiamo una E che unisce, per sostenere il presente e il domani di tutto il Paese. E lo facciamo da 70 anni. Eni, l'energia di sempre e l'energia nuova.
Quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Nasce Easy Bank, la nuova banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.